Originalnij text. Osinit sej periklad. Vas vidguk dopamos pokrazati Google perikladak. B. Regressive Tendencies. The Beginning B. I. By Lil Jenny I. B. Chapter 3. New World B. The next morning, Cammy awoke to an argument. I don't know where you found it, a graying orangutan was saying, gripping Juan's helmet, but this is a priceless artifact and should be in a museum, so it can be protected from the elements. Juan was chattering away in some very upset-sounding Spanish and trying to hold onto it, but he was losing the battle. He even managed some broken English. No museum. No take helmet. UNNH, can you please fight somewhere else while I'm sleeping? Cammy shouted, sitting up. Sorry, miss, but it's not a child's toy, he said, finally pulling it from the near hysterical colt's hooves. I'm sorry, but you'll be able to see it in the museum anytime you want, the point is that. So will everyone else. He left, gingerly holding the helmet he had just forcibly wrested from a toddler colt's hooves, no doubt to put it in a padded crate. But Juan was really upset. Dr. Catrillo had to come hold him to calm him down, and even after she left, he clutched at his blanket and sat on his camp bed for a while, rocking back and forth, his eyes closed. Cammy brushed her hair. Her hairbrush seemed huge now but still worked, and got dressed in the least kiddie-looking outfit she could find, a loose-fitting green dress that shouldn't be too hot. Dr. Catrillo managed to convince her that she should wear a diaper for the trip, because although she usually hadn't needed one during waking hours in the jungle, there wouldn't be many bathroom stops, and the restrooms on planes weren't exactly friendly for anyone her size. Dr. Catrillo also brought Cammy a yellow child-sized backpack, sitting down next to her and showing her what was inside: a change of clothes, her notepad and pens and pencils, and her cell phone and car keys. Cammy embarrassedly released Drive Catrillo from the hug she'd given her without thinking. Then a company nurse who said her name was Christina helped buckle Cammy in a still depressed-looking Juan into the back seat of one of the all-terrain trucks. As they rode, Cammy looked uneasily at Juan from time to time. After what had happened to him, she didn't feel like pressing him more about what he had meant by doomed, and she didn't think he could tell her much anyway. Or so she thought. She caught him looking uncertainly at her a few times during the drive through the jungle, and usually he would just look away, embarrassed. But then finally he tapped his chest with a forehoof and said, Juan Ponce. Juan Ponce, said Cammy. Is that your name? See, yes, said the colt. My name, Juan Ponce. Ponce de Leon. He added the last part proudly. That name bounced around in Cammy's mind for a moment, but it didn't take long to make a connection, especially considering the experiences of the past week. What? Ponce de Leon? The guy who went searching for the fountain of youth in what? The 16th century. Are you descended from him? Or are you him? My name is Juan Ponce de Leon. His accent was still thick, but his English was improving. No, 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 said Cammy, putting up her paws as if to push the information away. This is too much. Way too much. They have got to find a way to fix this. Had that damn water kept him a child for going on 500 years? For the rest of the trip, Cammy had a hard time looking at Juan, afraid that she might be seeing her future. So, said the nurse, showing Cammy to her room on the children's floor of the hospital, this is your room. She was a field mouse who looked to be in her 20s. I know it's probably not your style, because when I was 16 this wasn't my style either, she continued, but it's what we've got. The furniture, fixtures and equipment on every other floor of the hospital is just too big for a patient your size, so if you can put up with the rainbows and unicorns and cartoons and stuff, the point is that you'll be able to get in and out of bed by yourself, reach the sink and toilet by yourself, even go down to the lounge over there. She ended a sentence just as Cammy was wondering whether she ever breathed. Oh, and my name's Stephanie, but everybody calls me Steph. Another nurse had taken charge of Juan, who was getting a room down the hall. So are you tired? Hungry? Did you sleep on the plane? Did they get you anything for lunch? It's close to dinner time now, so we can get something brought up for you if you want. Steph paused, then said in a quieter tone, and if you need a change, or a bath, I can help you with that if you want. It's up to you though. The tub's in there. She pointed toward the bathroom, and through the open door Cammy could see a bathtub, sink and toilet with accommodations and Modifications for small patients. Can I have a bath, then some food? Cammy asked. She was looking forward to her first real bath in some time. Oh sure. Here, let me get the menu, and you can pick what you want, and then you can clean up while you wait for it to get here. And so it was. Steph helped her find some reasonably kitty pajamas in the box of clothes, and she took a bath without getting too much water on the floor. Cammy struggled into her pajamas, deciding to go without the diaper now that she was done with traveling, at least, while she was awake. And the very next thing she did was plug in her cell phone to start it charging. A little while later she was sitting in bed eating pizza. Okay, it was a hospital bed with rails and probably a waterproof mattress cover, and it was hospital pizza, but this wasn't too bad. She examined the TV remote and found with some dismay that it only had buttons for certain channels. Oh boy, both Nick and Nick Jr. She found a cartoon that wasn't too bad, though, and fumbled with her pizza. She didn't even get too much on herself. Then she suddenly started to feel tired. Really tired. It didn't feel like it was getting late, but she didn't think she was going to make it through the rest of this cartoon show, not that she cared about that. But then she just kind of passed out. There were vague impressions of being moved around a bit and somebody saying something like, "Poor dear, I'll bet you had an exhausting day, didn't you?" But she didn't really wake up. When she actually did wake up, the TV was off, the clock said it was after 6 a.m., and there was orange sunlight coming in the window. She sat up in bed and turned to get up, and saw that the bed's side rails were up. Huh, she said out loud. She also realized she was diapered again, and luckily so too. Steph, she called, then realized that Steph's work shift was probably long over. Or somebody. Then she pushed the call button that Steph had shown her. Moments later the door opened and a different nurse entered. "Oh gee morning, sweetie," she said. This sable-colored ferret talked with a strong New Jersey accent. "Did ya sleep okay? I'm Amy. I can call you Miss Dumo or Cameron." Hi. Cammy is fine. Can I get out of bed?" Cammy felt like cutting to the chase. "Oh sure," said Amy, pressing the catches to lower the side rail on one side of the bed. "Here ya go. Did you need any help with?" And here she pointed toward Cammy but more toward the floor. Changing. Cammy's eyes widened in embarrassment. "I only wear these at night," was the only thing she could think of to say, even though it sounded as if that was routine for her. Although, wasn't it, by now, I was going to take a bath and get dressed. "Oh, okay, sweetie," said Amy. Opening the door again to leave, she concluded with, "Just come out when you're ready, the doctors want me to take your vitals." She left, closing the door. Cammy sighed in relief. Cammy took her bath and got dressed, then Amy measured her, weighed her, took her temperature, and so on. She took a blood sample too, and Cammy's breakfast order. Just out of curiosity she looked in on Juan, who was fascinated by the TV, which he'd apparently never seen before. After lunch Steph came back and explained that she'd been the one who had put Cammy to bed. And yes, she had put one of Cammy's diapers on her. Cammy felt angry and upset to realize that there now existed diapers that were hers, because her medical folder had a note indicating that she usually needed them when she slept. And she'd put the side rails on the bed up just as a precaution. Because for Cammy it was quite a distance to the floor now, so falling out of bed was a real danger. Cammy didn't like it but had to admit that Steph was right. Cammy's phone was charged, and she found that it had dozens of voice and text messages, from Aunt Nadine and from her friends, mostly Penelope and Margaret. She talked to Aunt Nadine some, but couldn't think how to explain this to her. Well, with any luck she'd be back to normal before she got home anyway. Aunt Nadine said her voice sounded strange, but maybe it was just the phone. But because of that, she only texted Penelope and Margaret, so they wouldn't hear her voice at all. She wasn't as good at hitting the right buttons, but on the other paw, the buttons were larger compared to her fingers, so texting actually wasn't much harder than it had been. The days went by, and every so often one of the doctors would come to try some new test, or to see if she wanted to try some new pill or injection, or to update her on their findings. Cammy always asked to see their math. They seemed to be getting closer to understanding how the water worked. But exactly why it worked seemed to be eluding them, and they didn't seem to be getting any closer to finding out how to cure Cammy's condition, which made her more and more anxious as the end of Her internship drew near. The company's doctors seemed to want to send Cami home at the end of the summer and notify her if they had any new developments. But that meant Aunt Nadine seeing her like this. And what about her friends? It was usually Cami who called Aunt Nadine, but during the last week of Cami's internship, Aunt Nadine called her. She talked about how she'd been having fun with her friends, but then paused and said, "Cami, did you have something to tell me?" What do you mean? Cami was suddenly nervous. That was a question you asked a child. When she should have told you something important, but you found out another way. Then Cami felt annoyed, because she wasn't a child. Something about some kind of accident you had while you were in South America. Plainfield sent me an official letter of apology, and it said they were still trying to solve the problem, but it didn't explain very much. Her voice sounded worried, not angry. Cami sighed. Yeah, Aunt Nadine, I was hoping it'd be fixed before I came home, and everything would be back to normal, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. She explained what had happened, leaving out some of the more embarrassing parts. You're telling me that you found, what? The Fountain of Youth. Aunt Nadine sounded dubious. There's no way I'm going to believe that. Whatever, said Cami. You can see me when I get home. But as far as I'm concerned, I found the Fountain of Shortness. It made me really small, but as you can tell, my mind's the same. But you're telling me that you're a toddler puppy now. Now Aunt Nadine sounded oddly faint. Will you have to grow up again? I don't know, said Cami. I'm still hoping they'll find some kinda antidote. But it doesn't look like it'll happen before I get back. Well, I suppose it's good that Plainfield's sending some supplies. Supplies? What supplies? I couldn't say, Cami, Aunt Nadine said tiredly. The letter was vague about what happened to you, and all it said was that they'd be sending supplies to help with your care. I was worried that you'd been paralyzed or you'd broken your legs. But this I never expected. Aunt Nadine asked her more questions, mostly making sure she was all right, but soon she said she was tired and was going to lie down, and Cami said goodbye just in time to hear Juan shout from down the hall, "Ghoul!" Apparently he had discovered a Spanish language sports channel, and soccer was on. 2 days before the end, Cami was looking at some equations that one of the doctors had shown her, explaining how the water seemed to behave in a subject who, as she had, drank a lot of the water. They had taken to calling it Fountain of Youth water, or FOY water, for want of a better term. She had been thinking about how the equation worked when she had some surprise visitors. Well, drive, lane. This equation can't be solved analytically, but it's similar enough to others that can, so I can tell you that its solution is stable for concentrations below the critical threshold, she was saying. Her tongue was still tripping over more complicated words sometimes. But above that threshold, it becomes easier and easier to disturb. All it takes is something disrupting the homogeneity of the concentration. Then the entropy suppression field becomes unstable and might disappear completely. But it would be chaotic, said Dr. Lane, a Scottish terrier with bifocals and a lot of gray fur. The field would come and go, at unpredictable moments. I'm not sure that helps test the theory. Oh, hello, Dr. Da Silva. Cami turned around in her bed and saw that she had 3 visitors, Dr. Da Silva, Drive, Catrileo, and Leander. She frowned slightly at Leander, but he only smiled slightly. Actually he looked rather sad. Oh, hey, you didn't tell me you were coming, she said to them. She was actually happy to see them, maybe even Leander. Dr. Lane excused himself and left, trying to read Cami's scrawled notes. Oh, Cami, it's good to see you, said Dr. Catrileo warmly, leaning in for a hug, and Cami didn't push her away. Then a 4th person came in. Like Dr. Da Silva, he was feline, but his coat was entirely black. He smiled and nodded at Cami. He was wearing a gray suit and carried a briefcase. Cameron Dumo, meet my cousin, Noctis Da Silva, Dr. Da Silva said. He's a lawyer, and a good one. He's a junior partner in a New York law firm. I'm pleased to meet you, Miss Dumo, said Noctis, reaching out to shake her paw, which she allowed, still not sure what was going on. Dr. Catrileo said, the 3 of us were talking about what happened to you, and we wanted to make sure you had some representation, given what seems likely to happen. Why? What seems likely to happen? Cami asked, confused. Why did she need a lawyer? Noctis said, Plainfield is likely to make a lot of money from the discovery you made. We're going to make sure you get your fair share. After all, you found the spring, and you're still experiencing the, shall we say, medical side effects. Well, yeah. Side effects is right, Cammy said. So I might make a lot of money. Well, you're still a minor, said Noctis, so we'd likely want to set up a trust fund that would safeguard the money for you until you reach maturity, but it wouldn't have much money in it to begin with. In time, though, it could become quite valuable. We also want to make sure that your legal status is solid. Your appearance has changed as a result of the side effects of your discovery. And we don't want anyone disputing your identity. And last, well, Cammy, said Dr. Catrolio, it's been almost a month, your internship's almost over, and the research team hasn't found a way to return you to normal. The Colt boy shows signs of being affected by the water too, but the company's going to take care of him for as long as he'll allow the researchers to keep monitoring him. But you're going home. I think you told me that you lived with your aunt. It's going to take some adjustment, and I've heard that the company has sent supplies. But there might be expenses. And the company should help pay for those expenses, said Noctis. I believe it would rather do that than risk some sort of endangerment suit. My firm is respected, and I think even Plainfield would want to avoid legal action from us. That makes sense, said Cammy. What should I do? At the moment I just need you to sign this client statement, Noctis explained. You can read it, if you like, but basically it just says that you're allowing me to represent you in these legal matters. And that you're free to terminate this arrangement anytime you like. Since she's your guardian, we'll have to get your aunt to co-sign, but we'll take care of that later. Cammy read it. It did indeed say that, in more precise and legal language, so she signed it. And Noctis shook her paw, gave her his business card, and left, saying he'd get right to work on everything they'd talked about. We wanted to make sure to get someone private whom we could trust, Cammy, said Dr. Da Silva. There's no telling how long it'll be before they find a cure for you, dear, said Dr. Catrolio. Then Leander, who had been silent so far, said, I feel partly responsible for what happened. Cammy, I want you to know that I'm sorry, and I'm helping to pay Noctis's bill. I hope the doctors can find a cure, but if not, at least somebody's got your back. Cammy's emotions were mixed, but she said, well, thank you. This age regression stuff was complicated. If only it had come with some kind of instruction manual.